Hey everybody, Braden here. Welcome back to another part of the King's Indian attack speedrun. We're continuing on and playing against D5 here. We're going to continue on with our normal setup, and we're seeing another London system from our opponents. So they play this move, Bishop D6. I'll play D3. Knight F6. I'll play Knight D2, and I have a trick in mind. I'm expecting something like C6 or Knight C6. Here I should probably play C3 to prevent any Knight B4, Knight D4 stuff. And now I think it's time to try to go for the kill. Queen E1. This is a weird looking move. Oh, okay. I don't think that works. If I play H3, they have to respond to it. I doubt they're gonna take on F2. Or play something like Knight E3. But they go here. My idea before, as I should probably highlight, is if they play something like H4 or castles, E4, and then E5 will win a piece. That's the idea of Queen E1, is we also get out of the pin, so there's no Bishop G4 as a response. Here, I think I want to take and then play E4. But I have to watch out for D3 hanging. Takes, knight takes, and then, yeah, again, if I play E4, the problem is that they can take on D3. They are in time, which is very unfortunate. And because of that, maybe I should try switching things up. C4. C4, there's Knight B4. Huh. This is a very interesting way to play for my opponent. Maybe I'll just entertain them and take it. And the idea of taking it is I'll go D4 and E4. I'll just try to open things up. If they take with the bishop, then I can look at E4 immediately, which is a bit more enticing. But I'm not opposed to playing D4. It's just, you know, we're getting a lot of these same positions, which is really interesting. And it's kind of cool if you think about it, because, hey, if we're getting pretty similar positions almost every game, and this is like all you play as white, that can actually be an advantage. Because, well, hey, you're more familiar with the plans than your opponents, and that's not a bad thing at all. So they're taking a little bit of time here. I guess, obviously, they're deciding which piece to take with. I think knight is most natural. Bishop takes isn't bad or anything, but it kind of gives me more options. For example, the immediate E4. I could also still play D4 and then E4. So the real question is, do I play D4 and then E4 where it takes and then I have to take with the knight? Or do I play E4 where I take with the pawn? These are kind of the two differences here. I don't hate taking with the pawn. And if they do nothing and move away, then I can play like D4 and E5 and just really try to flex my central space there. Also, I'm just starting to take on D5 maybe. I have to be a little worried that there's like bishop takes D3 winning the exchange. But I think we have more than enough compensation after takes, and then even just queen takes F1. If they take back, we can at least regain the exchange. Sorry, those are deep calculations. I'm just going to play E4. I feel like this is very promising. But it's a good time to think, right? Because there's two main options, and they take the game into different routes. So you have to ask yourself, not just, hey, what is best, but also what are you comfortable with? For me, I'm pretty comfortable in a lot of positions. I feel like that's because I have a lot of experience in different types of structures. But some people might not have the same feelings there. Also, I could play D4 and then take on E4. That's also possible. Yeah, it really depends on your comfort level. And that's only really going to be decided if you play a lot of positions. So, I have a question. After the bishop moves, do I play F4 and E5? Or maybe should I wait? Play something like queen e3 here. Even knight c4 looks good. Knight c4 directly attacks the bishop, trying to get the bishop pair. And it looks like we are going to be successful in that if we play this move. If they play h4, I'm just going to take on e5 and then play g4. Because they don't have a dark squared bishop anymore, I'm not really too worried of making dark squared weaknesses. That's something important to mention. They could also try knight d3 at the end there, getting back the bishop pair. Like getting rid of mine, I mean. And if they play bishop f6, I can look at moves like e5. Yeah, so this makes me pretty happy, I think. I love taking. And I'm going to start with... Do I go queen e2 or queen e3? There's also bishop e3. Bishop e3 doesn't look stupid. I would be a little concerned about it with something like g4, h4, and then knight f3 check. f4? f4 is extremely aggressive. Could be the right approach, though. The problem is I'm worried about knight d3, so I don't think it's quite the right approach yet. Something like this. There is also another addition. There's bishop takes g5 that I'm just noticing because I have f4 and then I can take on e5. Who does that benefit, though? It's unclear because I'm opening up my side of the board, my king side, and they can probably castle long at the end. So I think I want to avoid that. Instead, I'll play bishop e3. And the idea is if they play some sort of g4, maybe I play bishop d4 instead. And the idea is just to target the knight. And they can't really move the knight because the rook behind it. The queen is actually perfectly fine here. It would rather be on e2, of course, connect your rooks when you're developing here. But I'm not too upset about how the game's gone so far. Yeah, so this is what I mean is knight f3 is a threat. So I'm going to play rook d1. Knight f3 would be a huge blunder because I can just take it. And it's taken and the rooks or the queen is being attacked, so they have to deal with that. I want to keep the king side closed here if I can. So I'll play something like h4. Yeah, h4 feels right. I could have also considered something like bishop d4, but no matter what, knight f3 is coming this move, and I have to take it. But in taking it, generally one thing you have to worry about is, will there be problems on the light squares? And here I'm not so sure. There's definitely a potential weakness on the light squares here that I'm noticing. And I have to be extremely careful here. Like if I play bishop g5 or bishop d4, they could take on e4 and threaten checkmate. So maybe I should go king h2. Let them take an entire pawn. And I'll go rook g1. And the thing is, my king looks extremely weak, but their king I think is weaker. By actually a fair amount. Their king has no obvious routes to safety. I am preventing them from castling long. Castling short looks like a nightmare because, well, there's no pawn coverage around their king. I can play things like c4, queen c3 and just try to get in. This bishop is doing a phenomenal job defending everything too. I'm looking at moves like bishop d4, even bishop f4. Or bishop g5. The thing is, as long as everything stays defended, I should be okay. And I only need these two squares defended to prevent mate. And I have to make sure that f4 doesn't kill me. So I can play queen d2. f4, I can just take it with my bishop. If e5, then I'm going to go queen d7 check. And I think I just win. And here, I was looking at getting in with something like bishop h6. This attacks the rook, and then my idea next is to play queen g5 check. Is this rash? Maybe. If I go here, there's f4. f4 is a big concern, actually. To avoid it, I could go bishop f4. But then bishop f4, there's actually rook d8 exclam. The idea of rook d8 is I can't take it because of queen takes f2. So my opponent's playing extremely well here. Let's play bishop h6. I think this is the right approach. And yeah, now I think I have queen g5, and this should actually be mating here. Queen g5 check. If I take on d8, it's still really tricky. I don't think I have a horrible position or anything, but definitely not a perfect one. Let's give a check. Got to be a little careful with how we do this. Queen g8, check. We want to deliver all checks because queen takes f2 is a direct mate threat, and bishop g5 is checkmate. That was a really interesting game, and we just hit 100 games with this account, and I think a 100 game win streak, which is cool. Let's go over the game, because, yeah, maybe we played this a little, you know, a little sketchy, and we didn't really have to do this. So first off, queen e1, anytime you play moves like this that aren't a direct developing move, you have to be extremely careful. Though I assess that h4, I think just win a piece right off the bat here with e4. And the idea is if they take, and move somewhere, then we have e5. They could always go bishop d3, but I think that this is well worth it in these positions. Take with the queen or the pawn. Let's just say the queen, so they can castle long, I guess. But yeah, positions like these, I think we have more than enough compensation. And actually, I think even though it says equal material here, I think white has a much better, if not winning, position at this point. So knight to g4 here. h3, knight to e5. This is actually a very interesting maneuver, and maybe I should have been a little bit more hesitant to give up some of the light squares. Like around here, when they played g5, that's a very strong move. Maybe I shouldn't play knight c4 here. Maybe h4 is better. And h4, I don't think g5's in time. We can take it and play something like knight c4, and I think this is extremely strong for us. We'll take the bishop here. Actually, we also have f4, I believe, at this point. So we should be winning there if they try something like g5. They're not really in time to do it. I was a little greedy trying to get the bishop pair. I somewhat defend my choices here. But the thing is, after bishop f6, we don't go e5. We can't go e5 because I think bishop d3 is such an annoying threat. For example, they might even just be able to play bishop e7 because bishop d3 is still hard to deal with. Like if queen e3, bishop d3 anyways, right? This is rook d1. And the bishop should be lost. But that does take a little bit of time to realize. Yeah, maybe in hindsight, next time I'd play h4. And we had a similar game where we played h4 and there's some like g5, h4 stuff. But I think the important thing to mention there was that the center was closed. As in, the d-pawns I don't believe were traded in that line. And so there was a lot more concern about some sort of like g5, like let's just say h4. There's a lot more concern about these types of variations that we see with h4 coming. But here it doesn't work. Again, d-pawns are traded, so it helps keep the center a little bit more open. Again, if your opponent's attacking you on the flank, you want to attack them in the center, just because generally when they do that, they're spending time away from the center, so you want to spend time in the center. And yeah, here, yeah, we can play moves like f4, even g4 if we want to. Maybe even take the pawn like f4 and like takes. This doesn't even look that bad. We're up 2 full pawns. I don't think it's actually worth it, despite our king looking a little airy at the moment. I think it's gonna be actually pretty difficult to make any headway against us. And we have ideas like e5 and even maybe bishop e4 or something. Yeah, this looks winning. So all this was good. G4 was extremely strong, and I definitely should have... I mentioned that there could be some knight f3 checks in the air, and I definitely should have paid more mind to it. Maybe rook d1 was actually just incorrect, and I should have looked at bishop d4 instead. And the idea of bishop d4 is that we're just trying to take this piece. Like, for example, if queen f6 or something, and we take, and then we play h4 here, I think white is just better, actually. Just a clear advantage. They don't really want to castle long, because then we start getting in, and, you know, queen e3 already creates a threat. We can play moves like a4, a5 to try to soften up their king. Their king feels like it's going to be easier to attack than ours because, well, actually, these pawns, they're not really making any headway. They have to make a break like f5, f4. And that's just going to take quite a bit of time, especially since we already have a threat right now. They don't have time for something like f5. Anything else here? Yeah, well, actually, another thing to mention is if they castle short, then I think this is close to winning at this point, honestly. Something like, again, queen to e3. If they ever play f5, which, again, is the only way to make headway against our king, then we immediately can try to infiltrate if we want to. Even though it might not even be the best thing or necessary, we could just take over the d file, and you know, their king is weak, but we're kind of better everywhere else too. So that's another thing to point out is, yeah, just be a little bit careful. Sometimes you don't have to throw in moves like rook d1. Sometimes moves like bishop d4 are better. And the reason why I say it's better is because knight f3 takes, they're not in time to deal with the fact that they need to recapture and defend their rook. They could, I guess, try e5, but we can take it, and if f6, we can take it, takes, and then we just go bishop g2, I think, and we're all good here. Just remember, sometimes you got to make something called a desperado sacrifice. That's what this move, bishop takes f6, is. We have 2 pieces hanging, so we want to save... well, we want to generally save the higher quality one, and we do that by playing bishop f6 because we're attacking their queen. They have to respond to this, and then we can remove the bishop. And even if they take here, this is dead lost because they can't even castle long. We have f4, e5 coming, taking over the center, and if they castle here instead, then we play h4, close everything down. We have moves like queen e3, rook d1 coming, and again, completely 2 results game. White should win this. Actually, no, it's just a winning position. It's not 2 results. 2 results generally means like one side's pushing, but you know, it's like slightly better or equal-ish, but it feels like only one side could win. Here, it's just winning, straight up. So that's not even an accurate phrase in this case. And yeah, I think that covers it. We should have been really careful here. Luckily, I think we're okay after king h2 and rook g1. Again, mind your opponent's threats and respect them. Here, there was some problems here. And they could have tried some sort of f4 at some point. Maybe even here. I don't think it's unreasonable to consider. I probably would have taken on f8. And after rook takes f8, we definitely have some work to do. Because there's threats of taking and queen f2 here that are extremely concerning. Let me see. Like, if we pass, then I think this just wins. I think so. We take with the pawn, I'm assuming. We could take with the rook, I guess. I guess we could take with the rook. This just looks extremely dicey. They're getting quite a bit of pawns for it. They're actually up material here. And this just does not feel good. They can actually probably win this h-pawn if I try going like rook d7. I don't even think they have to defend the pawn on c7. They could also try rook b1, rook h1 and taking. Or they could play it extremely safe and play something like c5. With c4 coming. Yeah, this looks lost for white. So I have to be extremely careful here. And this all kind of goes back to, hey, rook d1 looks like a very natural move, but I think it actually just causes way too many problems. If anything here, we should have considered bishop f4 instead, with the idea that if knight f3, at least they don't get in on the light squares, and we can play things like e5. E5 looks reasonable, and then like we might have to play king h2. We can't play h4 because of queen h3 winning. So we could also play h4 here instead. That doesn't look so bad. If they play here, we can always go bishop g5. And I don't see a direct route in. They could try to force themselves in somehow if they get the construction of like queen on g4 and a bishop on e6, because then it would be a check and it'd be a battery that we can't stop. But yeah, this is a very effective plan, and I think our opponent played something very, very reasonable that we should definitely watch out when we get to the higher levels here, is be extremely careful with these kingside advances and make sure that we aren't just losing on the spot with something like this with knight f3, because we could have been in some pretty serious danger if our opponent played a little bit more accurately afterwards. That's going to cover it for the game, though. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.